Hello, and welcome to a tutorial on the accessibility requirements for NEA-funded projects. My name is Beth Bienvenu, and I'm the Accessibility Director at the National Endowment for the Arts. This presentation is designed to help applicants understand the NEA's requirements for making funded projects accessible to all audiences and participants, including people with disabilities and older adults. I will cover the federal requirements for accessibility and how they apply to the NEA's grant application and grants management process. This tutorial is not a substitute for reading the application guidelines and instructions. Please carefully read all materials to learn more about the application requirements. A transcript of this tutorial will be provided on our website. And a note about visual description. This slide and others include a set of 7 accessibility symbols that represent access for people with vision, hearing, and mobility disabilities. Accessibility is a legal requirement of each and every NEA grantee, and funded organizations have responsibilities for accessibility under 2 laws. First, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. The Rehabilitation Act prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in programs conducted by federal agencies, which includes NEA events and partnerships, and programs that receive federal financial assistance, such as projects funded through our grants and cooperative agreements. The Americans with Disabilities Act prohibits discrimination and ensures equal opportunity for persons with disabilities. This means that non-discrimination requirements apply to state and local governments, such as state arts agencies and certain local arts agencies, under Title II of the ADA. And they also apply to places of public accommodations and services under Title III of the ADA, which covers organizations such as museums, performing arts centers, theaters, and galleries. The key requirements under these laws are non-discrimination, equal opportunity, which means that you must provide reasonable modifications, auxiliary aids or services that are necessary to achieve it, such as sign language interpretation, audio description, large print, and accessible websites. It also includes basic standards of architectural access, which means that you must remove barriers to existing facilities and new construction. And finally, it requires equal access to employment, programs, activities, goods, and services. Keep in mind that as a recipient of NEA funds, an organization must comply with both the ADA and the Rehabilitation Act. Now I will discuss what this means for those applying for and receiving NEA funds. First, I'll talk about what is required when you apply for an NEA grant. To start this off, this slide shows a screenshot of the signature page of the assurance of compliance that you will sign in the grant application to certify that you agree to comply with the terms of the award. These terms include assuring that you will not discriminate on the grounds of disability in accordance with Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act. And in addition to signing the assurance of compliance in our application, you must also accept the Financial Assistance General Certifications and Representations in SAM.gov that says that you will comply with these laws. Keep in mind that the Arts Endowment may conduct a review of your organization to ensure that it is in compliance with these statutes. If the Arts Endowment determines that a grantee has failed to comply with these statutes, it may suspend or terminate the award and recover the funds. If your application is approved for funding, you have some additional steps to take. You will need to review the general terms and conditions, which are linked to in the application and in the Manage Your Award section of our grants webpage. The general terms and conditions state that access should be integrated into all facets and activities of an organization, from day-to-day operations to long-range goals and objectives. Access accommodations and services must be given a high priority, and funds should be available for these services. All organizations are legally required to provide reasonable and necessary accommodations for staff and visitors with disabilities. It also requires that you designate a staff member to serve as a 504 coordinator. You should also include your coordinator's name and contact information on your website for accommodations requests. And keep in mind that there are also requirements for an ADA coordinator under the ADA for state and local governments. In addition, a Section 504 self-evaluation must be on file at your organization. It should be kept on file for 3 years, and it should be updated with each new grant. To help your organization evaluate its programs and activities and facilities to ensure full compliance with Section 504 accessibility requirements, the NEA's Civil Rights Office has a Section 504 self-evaluation workbook available on our website. Please note that failure to have this on file is a common audit finding. Finally, you will also need to complete the accessibility questionnaire to explain how your project will be accessible to people with disabilities. This form, which covers both physical and programmatic accessibility, is submitted when you accept a funding offer. This slide shows a copy of the questionnaire in which you will answer 2 questions. First, physical accessibility, which means that buildings and facilities where project activities take place, including those held in historic facilities, are required to be physically accessible. Second, programmatic accessibility, which means that the programmatic aspect of the project are required to be accessible as either part of the planned activity or upon request where relevant. On this form, you will answer how you will meet these requirements. The rest of this tutorial will cover what this means for cultural organizations. For physical accessibility, this can include ground level, no-step entry, ramped access, and elevators to project facilities and outdoor spaces. Integrated and dispersed wheelchair seating in assembly areas such as auditoriums and classrooms, and wheelchair accessible box office, stage, and backstage, as well as meeting rooms and dressing rooms. It also can include wheelchair accessible display cases, exhibit areas, and counters, accessible studios, classrooms, and workspaces, artist residency studios and living spaces, wheelchair accessible restrooms and water fountains, and directional signage for your accessible entrances and restrooms. The programmatic aspects of your project must also be accessible as either part of the planned activity or upon request as relevant. This can include public contact information for requesting accommodations, accessible electronic materials and websites, alternate formats such as Braille and large print or audio files, accommodations such as sign language, audio description, real-time captioning, and tactile opportunities, closed and open captioning, and also assisted listening devices. Accommodations can be made upon request for specific performances or activities or on an ongoing basis. Be sure to include easy-to-find information on how to request an accommodation with your contact information. And a few other things to keep in mind. Be sure to give full consideration to how you will ensure the accessibility of your project early in your application process. You can build the cost of most accommodations, such as sign language interpretation or live captions, into your project budget under direct costs. It is important to note that neither NEA grant funds nor the cost share or matching funds for an award can be used for capital improvements. We do not fund construction or renovation projects. To help you, we have a number of resources available on our website. These include our Design for Accessibility Cultural Administrator's Handbook, the Section 504 Self-Evaluation Workbook, and a brief accessibility checklist. You can find these resources and others at arts.gov/accessibility/accessibility-resources. Thank you for viewing this tutorial. Please remember that accessibility to your programs and facilities is not just a requirement, but it's an important way to reach everyone in your community.